Happy Monday. Jeremy just killed me there because he went from like 0 to 60 when we said we were going live in his smile factor.
Like a magic
from
trick.
this to
We are recording this on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, 2021. Happy MLK Day. I was just talking with a friend earlier today. We were sort of pondering whether it's appropriate to say Happy MLK Day. Like, I don't know the best way to acknowledge it to other people, but it is MLK Day, and I hope that it has been a good one for all of you, and I hope that it is a good one for our country. Mm-hmm. Did you work today, Jessie?
So I was supposed to have the day off, but it's also payroll day, so I had to go in for like an hour and a half. So I had the rest of the day off.
Nice.
And I will just take off a little extra later in the week. So, yeah.
Cool.
Comp time is amazing.
Yeah, it's not for reals, but I'm on clock-in status right now. So, yeah, we'll have to move the money around so I don't get overtime.
So as anyone who's joining us can see, Jessie, Jeremy, and I are not alone this week. We are joined by a very special guest. This is Jill Robinson.
Hello, everyone.
Jill is, she's a queen. she's my rock, my sanity. I don't know. Someday I'll have like the right list of wedding vows for you. But Jill is my production stage manager for the digital restoration series. She is stage managing 7 full-length projects and 4 short-term ones, and she has been a continual guest on our deep dive podcast about the digital restoration shows. And she's head of stage management, and she's here today because we're going to be talking about repertory theater, and she and I are knee-deep in our own repertory process, all on Zoom, because we like playing on hard mode, I guess. And we're just going to talk about rep theater in general and kind of why it's awesome and what it can offer, and especially what it can offer with classical theater, because I think that rep offers a very specific, special way of connecting with audiences and connecting audiences with story when it comes to plays with heightened language, like Shakespeare. So, but the most important question to ask right off the bat is, what are people drinking?
So sorry, excuse me. Right before I came here, I went to a sauna. That's what I did for Martin Luther King. And then like right around the corner is like a little health store. So I went in there. It's called Apple Crate. Jessie, you may be familiar. It's magical. Mm-hmm. So I have had fermented beverages, but not alcoholic ones, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
Nice.
So here I am drinking CBD soda.
Nice.
Ooh.
It's delicious.
Very cool.
Good.
I have some leftover hot chocolate in my Les Miserables mug I was drinking earlier today. Yeah, I was in a hot chocolate mood. Usually I do coffee, but it's a Monday. I thought I would spice it up a little. And then I just have some water in my water bottle that I did not plan to match my cardigan, but it does.
So put together.
Oh, Jill, I'm right there with you. I've got my hot chocolate as well. Stuck a little splash of Bailey's in there. Yeah.
Good for you. Way to live it up. I think that I'm always the most boring. I'm just drinking water. It's only 2:04 p.m. my time. I'm trying to be a little bit responsible. I still have like 9 emails to send before the end of the day, and I need to be mostly cogent when I write them. So, I'll save my cider and wine for when my parents arrive in Sun River tonight. How are y'all doing?
Good.
This is going to be one hell of a podcast. There's going to be these long pauses where y'all were nodding, and the people listening are going to be like, do they all hate her? Like, why the silence?
I'm all right. We start back with meetings at my real job, which is Fayetteville State University. We're starting back with meetings this week, including Thursday, which is like during the workday, has something like 7 hours of meetings slotted as a sort of welcome back. And I'm like, that is not a welcome back. That is the worst possible thing you could do.
Are they giving you food at least?
No, they're all on Zoom.
Oh. They should send you food.
I don't have to wear pants, but that's the only give back. It is, meetings and I don't get along. Anyway, quite aside from the Zoom reality that we're in right now. I like a good meeting, but we're not going to have them. That's what I'd say.
I'm feeling the into January kind of where I am. For those of you who don't know, I'm Canadian, so right now I am in Windsor, Ontario. So our January and February can get kind of dreary. So this last couple weeks have been basically freezing cold, but just gray. And yeah, so that I've been feeling really tired, kind of not as in like exhausted, just like the weight of the weather and all that's going on too. So I've been doing a lot of making sure I'm doing a lot of like yoga, meditation, balancing out exercise kind of thing to keep the body well during this gray time.
Yeah.
So I actually did like a soul stretch class today. That's the brand name of the gym I'm a part of. And yeah, that just added a little bit of light into the very grayness that is January up here in the Great White North. We're supposed to get snow, so I hope that comes soon because I would much rather be looking out windows and seeing a snow globe than a gray blanket. So, yeah.
It's understandable.
Yeah. Good luck with that snow. That would be much better for sure.
Yeah, it's funny.
We've had a lot of rain here, although it's kind of balanced out a little bit of sunniness this weekend, so that's been good. I'm sorry, I'm going to mute myself for a minute and then I'll go back to talking.
It's funny, Jill, you say that about it being gray in Canada. So obviously you, like Jeremy and Jessie, are on the East Coast, and your EST, I'm 3 hours behind. I had a meeting yesterday with 6 actors before we had rehearsal. And so it was 1:30 my time, 4:30 p.m. their time, EST, because most of them are East Coast. And I realized as I was talking to them, I was like, you're all glowing. Why are you glowing? And then I realized I never see them during daylight hours for them. They're daylight hours for me because rehearsals for me start in the afternoon. But for them, we start rehearsal at 6 or 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and we're in the winter, so the sun has already long set by then. So I got on the call with all these actors. It was 4:30 in the afternoon, and they're all like, their skin is glowing. They're like, their rooms are awash with sunlight. I was like, oh man, that's right. I never see y'all at this time of day. They looked so healthy and alive. It was great. But it really was sort of funny because there was a part of me that was like, did you all just get a lot of vitamin D? And then I'm like, no, it's just the sun is out because it's afternoon for you. And I'm so glad we're past the December 21st date. So now the days can just get longer and longer and longer. Thank goodness.
Oh, yes. Please and thank you to that. Driving to work in the dark is like the worst. And although I don't do as much of that, but driving into the sunset coming home, it's terrible. Terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in Fayetteville is early in the time zone. And so what that means is it gets darker like faster here than basically anywhere else. I suppose in Maine and places like that are much further east, it's dark at like 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But it gets dark really, really, really early here. So I could like walk out at 4:45 and it's like basically twilight.
Yeah, it's really weird.
I like I have a little I bought myself a little daylight lamp. I actually have 2 of them.
Cool.
One for here and one for like the chair I sit in the morning.
Nice.
And it helps. And my doctor also told me, he's like, stop wearing sunglasses in the winter. And I'm like, really? Because like I have sensitive whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, stop. You'll feel better. And guess what? I do. It's amazing.
Huh.
No sunglasses in the winter.
Science is an amazing thing.
Yeah. Nuts.
So
when I'm not streaming, right, I like just tape this this little light to the front of my eyeballs. And I just walk around like this.
Whatever works.
Yeah. I mean, if that's how you have to get stuff done, I know for me, like when you get home and it's dark already, like I'm like, I'm done. I can't do anything else. I can't. Which is kind of how my weekend went was at least Sunday. I was like dead on the couch because we had my sister's baby shower the day before. And that was its whole day long process. But I was tired. And then today I was like, I got to bust some home projects out. did that.
Yeah,
Fun.
I really felt the time lapse when we did the Rover, because we spent 7 weeks on that project instead of the typical 4. And we rehearsed more infrequently, but we rehearsed for more weeks. And when we started the project, it was early September. So like, and it was early September 2020. So climate change was in full flux. Like it was hot. The days were long. It was, you know, actors were glowing and rosy until deep into rehearsals. It was like the end of summer, right? It was like it was the high golden end of summer. And by the time we finished the project, it was mid-November. And like by the time we started rehearsal, it was already dark East Coast time, and actors just looked paler and they looked more tired. And yeah, I really felt the shift like from end of summer into like deep autumn coming up on winter through the course of doing that show.
I didn't even think of this, Claire, but the Rover kind of being set in carnival time, a big festival, it kind of was like we were celebrating Big Bang of the summer. And then we get into November with Man of Mode rehearsals where it's like we're segueing to winter and the coldness and the darkness. And like
everybody is so mean.
Is the underlying of that play.
Everyone is horrific. Yeah, I think that's very true. Yeah, so, but anyway, we're talking about rep theater today. So, would one of our classmates like to talk about what rep theater is, and maybe their personal experience with it? Jeremy, do you want to talk about Sweet Tea's experience?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first.
Yeah.
So, rep theater or repertory theater is what happens when you're doing more than one play at once. That's the simple version. But then there are like ways to branch that tree out. So it is doing more than one play at once, but it can also be so there are lots of examples where, and you're going to talk about one where like you're doing 2 plays at once and they sort of talk to each other in some way. And then you have a repertory project essentially. Then there's this whole like repertory company sort of situation, which is maybe over some span of time. It could be a season. That's what it's probably the most common thing that happens. But it could be multiple seasons, multiple years. It could be a lifetime where there is a group of people and maybe people come in and out of that group over time. Obviously, career changes and people die and all that kind of situation. But there's like kind of a core body of folks that move along and work with each other across multiple projects. And Sweet Tea has a good deal of experience with I guess all 3 kinds to some degree. Yeah. Prior to my Sweet Tea life, I probably had the most experience with the sort of multi-season format. I mean, in reality, that's what every college and university theater department is a sort of rolling repertory company of sorts. And then, prior to the sort of modern Broadway movement, most companies were repertory companies. Like they were permanent, like folks on contract. And certainly all of the plays, not all, but a great majority of the plays we look at Sweet Tea, both with digital restoration series and the Shakespeare stuff, were built for those. Yeah. So they're built for a similar group of people doing similar things, and that repertory situation is really the sort of the foundation of how theater is made, at least going back to the Italian Renaissance, and probably earlier than that in some respect. Yeah. So I'm taking my college professor hat off now. You're welcome. Thank you for coming to class, y'all. Drink up.
I mean, Jill and I actually, we do have experience with 2 of those strands, actually. We have immediate experience with the Stratagem Project, which we're going to talk about, which is, as Jeremy said, 2 plays. They're connected. They are speaking to each other. And we have literally one group of 16 people who are all in both. All 16 people are in both shows. And it's just, there's no additional people who are a part of one or the other. It's the same cast of 16 in both shows, and that's it. And we're rehearsing the shows at the same time on a almost a rotating basis. And then Jill and I are also spearheading the digital restoration series, which is 10 titles in 10 months as of right now. And we have, as of right now, there are 42 artists who have been involved. And I would say, I think I did the numbers actually earlier today because I was talking to someone about it. 10 of those 42 have been in at least 5 of the 7 titles we have done so far. So there's a group of like 10 people that have really, in a repertory way, stuck with the digital restoration series across multiple shows in a row. And so every time I work with them, I get to build upon the work we've already done, and I get to push them further. And at the same time, they get a much better understanding of this kind of work, this writing, this era, the archetypes therein, this moment in history. And they are playing characters that are in a restoration archetype. So they get to experience lots of different roles that are under the umbrella of one trope, which is exactly what restoration actors were doing at the end of the 17th century. So we sort of have that sort of double rep experience. And Jessie, I think, were you involved with the rep of Merry Wives and Richard III?
So I was in Merry Wives, but I was not in Richard.
Okay.
So that was kind of my intro to, I think that was the first one I did that was kind of in rep, but I was not a rep actor in that. But that was really cool just to see different actors doubled as completely different characters between the two. And then I was also a part of what was more of this speaking to each other type of rep this past year in 2020 between Midsummer and Two Noble Kinsmen, Knight's Tale.
Yeah, because there was the Hippolyta Theseus over. Right? Like
they
two actors played those, and they played those roles in both.
I think Hippolyta ended up different just because we had casting changes and conflicts. But they were initially, that was our hope. But Theseus was the same in both, which was really cool. And then there's kind of some characters that mirror each other a little bit, like the lovers. There's kind of like their counterparts between the two.
To get Canadian a little bit again, the Stratford Festival in Stratford, Ontario, and the Shaw Festival in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario. Those are like the highest tiered companies we have here in Canada, and they operate via rep as well. And I actually had the privilege in my 3rd year of theater school to do a summer program at the Shaw Festival, where it was a 2-week intensive, and we piggybacked lectures. We had like a prof come from University of Toronto, and he would lecture us on plays, and then we would go see plays, and we would do talkbacks with these rep actors. Cool. And it was super neat and awesome to be able to see them in, do a Chekhov one day and then be seen in the musical we see the next day. So that was, I've had like a 2-week sort of intro to rep theater and how. Because to me, even just as a performer, doing shows in rep, like it really, there's like a diligence you need even more so than doing just one play, because it's like the brain and body need to like really be on. And the idea of being present in every moment is absolutely key, because otherwise you fall off those rails and you're on your own.
Yeah.
So it's neat to kind of see that, Claire, in the Stratagem Project, kind of volleying back and forth between both plays. And like you said, too, like having the actors repeat since the beginning of DRS and having them kind of sink into the different characters but take a little bit from their other characters. It's neat to see people really cool. Shifting into gears. Yeah.
So the Stratagem Project, in a nutshell, is an exploration of the ways that late 18th century theater was looking back to early 18th century and Restoration theater as it was sort of emerging from the sentimental comedy and the very mopey, moral, vanilla theater that kind of pervaded the 18th century. And it's as Brinsley Sheridan is coming up, Goldsmith, Hannah Cooley, all of those late 18th century authors who were writing the big comedies that would go on to sort of define the genre into the 1800s, they're looking back to the Restorationists for inspiration of how to be bold, bright, juicy, satirical, mean in some cases, and just more full in the humanity than the very narrow, patriarchal, kind of rigid rhythm of sentimental comedy. So the Bose Stratagem was a late Restoration comedy written by Irish satirist George Farquhar. And he was writing right at the tail end of the Resto age. In 1707, he wrote the Bose Stratagem, which is it's like the blueprint for every like buddy heist movie that has ever existed. Like if Ocean's 11 was just Ocean's 2, if it was just about Danny Ocean and Russ, it would just be the Bose Stratagem set in Las Vegas. Like Bose Stratagem it's just two idiots who are in their 20s who have poured and gambled away all the money they ever owned in London, and they have decided they are going to run a con in the countryside where English people are stupid, in quotes, and they are going to one of them is going to pretend to be a rich lord, the other is going to pretend to be his servant, his valet, and they are going to seduce a rich woman into marrying the guy that she thinks is the rich lord, and then they're going to have control of her money, and that they will be able to go back to London and continue their lives of debauchery. And then, of course, both of them get, like, immediately drop-kicked by love by falling in love with these incredible girls who are more challenging than they sort of expected. So that's the Bose Stratagem. Then 70 years later, a proto-feminist named Hannah Cooley, who was writing during the American Revolution in London, she's looking back to the Resto authors, and she writes a play that she calls the Bells Stratagem, which is a reimagining of the Bose Stratagem set in London in 1780, the world that she was used to, and it centers a female protagonist who runs a con to win the heart of the man that she loves. So Jill and I we're at the helm of this mighty project. We have an incredible group of artists working on it. I'm in the company, and I, like almost all the other actors, I have a big role in one play and a tiny role in the other. This is mostly to preserve actors' mental health, but it's also to give everybody a chance to sort of be in the spotlight and have the chance to really shine. The only two exceptions to that are the two guys that are playing the leads in both plays. So there's a friendship between two young men at the center of Bose Stratagem. Those are the con men, and Bells Stratagem. That is the guy that the girl is wooing and his best friend. And so we have the same two actors playing them in both. And they played Wilmore and Belleville for me in The Rover, so they have been playing best friends from the Restoration for a long time. And this is kind of their swan song, I guess, to Restoration friendship. And I started working with them on the texts in early December, I think, and we only started rehearsing Stratagem on January 2nd. So I had a full month with them to start prepping, because as Jill said, when you are doing two shows at the same time and you have two different roles, it requires a level of diligence and focus that is really hard to sustain, especially over 10 weeks, which is how long Stratagem is taking. And so for all the rest of us, we only have to worry about one big role, and we have a small role that we can be a little bit more relaxed on. These two guys have leads in both, so we did a run-up of 4 weeks of prep before we brought in the rest of the cast. That was really fruitful, and I think we're sort of we're reaping the benefits of that in rehearsal now, as Jill can attest. They're doing really wonderful
Absolutely.
work. Yeah, it's really fun, but it's gnarly. Like sometimes, like we'll be in rehearsal and we'll be like, Bose, no, wait, Bells, Archer, no, wait, Aimwell, Dorinda, no, wait, Doracourt. Like we're constantly like mixing up roles and plots from the two plays because they've now become sort of commingled for us. And I don't know, Jeremy, have you ever directed two shows kind of around the same time, or been in two shows?
Oh yeah, at the same time, like switching back and forth, like from, I don't know whatever it is, from 6:30 till 8, I'm going to be in Pericles, and then I'm going to step out, and from 8:30 to 10 I'm going to be doing Tempest. And I had sort of a, so that's the I did a version of that with the Richard III and Merry Wives. I had some on that one. I had some co-directors on the SeaWorld project. We just called it SeaWorld. We had a co-director for Pericles, and that was kind of based on earlier production of it that I'd done, and so it was a lot of just like trying to remember things that we'd done before.
Yeah.
And I think we did I might have done it with As You Like It and Twelfth Night together, and I feel like there's one more before that where we're kind of doing two at the same time. It is a sort of challenge more on the like personal stamina side for me, but like there are economies and good things that happen when you do that, like standing up a play and just getting it ready in sort of pre-production and production is a very hard thing to do. It's hard to sort of build momentum and sort of get people sort of firing on all cylinders and all of that.
Yeah.
So if you have to do it for one, you might as well do it for two, because the energy that it takes to sort of rebuild something after, you take a 4-week break or a 2-month break or whatever, it's a lot of energy. And if you can just ramp it up once and sort of just do the work, there are a lot of reasons it makes sense. The other reason I like doing it sometimes is that I think it really focuses people. It like you get rid of a lot of the I don't know what the word is, the froof, the extra, the like no like the giant sort of visionary dreams of a director and the sort of ego trips of the actor. Not all of them are like that, but like you can the amount of energy and then the busyness can kind of get streamlined and prioritized in ways that you can't do, and like, hey, we're just going to get together and do whatever it is, Seagull, and that is useful.
And Jill, I'm in both casts. I'm actually acting in the Stratagem Project, and unlike all the other times I've acted in the DRS, this one was intentional. This one was supposed to happen, which was great because it meant that I could properly prepare for it, right? I could actually prepare to play characters as opposed to being sort of thrown into playing one at the last minute. And I could prepare the actors for it as well, specifically my scene partner in Bells. But you are stage managing both shows, but you are not in either of them. So you really are like the head. You are the head of the production side of the table always, because you are never inside of the world of the play the way I am. So what has it been like for you in that position with the 9 rehearsals we've had for Stratagem so far, the like 30 hours of rehearsal we've had?
Yeah, it's funny because a year ago, I kind of what Jeremy was saying of doing 2 plays at once. I was ending Legally Blonde around this time, but piggybacking Oh What a Lovely War. I was a performer in that one, so I had to go from being like a peppy sorority girl to being like a Russian soldier to then being cast as Rapunzel. So like the overlapping of contracts, I haven't necessarily like worked in rep, but like the overlapping of contracts, just to speak to Jeremy's thing of like, absolutely, it does. It makes you you have to focus and cut to the chase of like switch off your brain, center it in on the one play. So segueing that to now, a year ago, being on the other side of the table and sort of having that same vibe, like even though my position as stage manager is the same for both plays, the flavor of both pieces are different, right?
So
like
different.
Bose exactly.
So different.
Bose very much is like physical comedy. It's a bit wackier.
Yep.
It's messier, right? And Bells is sparklier. There's more genuine romance there. So there is still like that switching on and off, but being sort of the one, like the constant position of stage management, I'm finding what really, I've said this with all the other plays we've done, but what's really, really helping is that like taking every rehearsal day by day, like you have the over arcs, you have all the lists prepped, you have your notes of remind on this day or have this, but then every day is like its own flower kind of thing, right? And you're giving the attention to that flower. You are making sure that it is watered. There's enough sunlight.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with this metaphor, but I'm like, sure, let's talk about flowers. It's really cloudy today. No, and just, I've been finding even more so with when we see like our daily calls, Claire, like I look at the actors on the daily call. I make myself a physical list, and I like give myself a beat of like, we have these people in the room. I know these people by now since we've done this since last autumn.
Yeah.
So I know their flavor, right? I know their personality. I'll know like, oh, that person's a bit of a chatter, that person's not, right? So I've been really with this project just like making sure I'm aware of everything that's outside the room and inside the room, and then just being as present and on top of like all of the framework so that the space can just be playful. And especially for you, Claire, too, because we've talked about how you do have bigger roles in this project, and it very much is your brain is the on the artistic side of it, right? So yeah, so I've been it's really helped working with the same folks because, like I said, like knowing as a person, I'm an empath, so like I vibe off of people's energy, so that's really helped to kind of get to know these people over the last couple months. It's made the spaces easier to chat, easier to like debrief and stuff with. But I think it's a day by day thing. It's like, like for example, last rehearsal we had a fight direction segment, and that was the first time we'd had that for this project, and the first time we've kind of had that for the whole DRS. So that was something new.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like, okay, this is something new we're doing today, and we're all just letting it hit us, letting the experience happen, and then we have a plan in place now, and we'll dot our I's and cross our T's. Like it's fun. It's fun because especially doing these things on Zoom, like it's everyone's kind of first rodeo too, right? So as long as I talked about this in another podcast too, but as long as everyone is kind of on the battlefield, moving together through the project, and being kind and being open, then it's going to be a success. Like there's no other way around it. So there's a lot of highlighters, a lot of multicolored pens. One of my Christmas presents this year was like a rainbow set of pens and a new journal. So I nerded out hard over that, and I've already been using color coding for Bose and color coding for Bells.
We just talk about like pink and blue. We're like, is it a pink day or is it a blue day? Is it a pink hour or a blue hour? Like it's just how we do it in our heads now. And what's been most fun for me actually are the conversations that I've been able to have with actors that have gotten deeper and more existential, because doing the granular scene work and text work of like, what are the restoration characters saying? Why do they talk like this? Because I've worked with some of these actors upwards of 5 times on Resto now. We don't have to do any of that work. They've either done it themselves before they get to rehearsal, or they don't need to ask the questions anymore because they know the rules of the game. And so we can actually zoom out. We can have bigger picture conversations like about theme and structure and, deep character desire and psychology. And we can talk about the plays in conversation with each other because we don't have to worry about picking apart the rules of the restoration theater itself. They all know those rules now. And so we can springboard from that shared understanding into a deeper understanding of the plays. And I love it, especially when I'm talking with Ben and Ron, who are playing Aimwell and Archer, the two untrained, untested, rather foolish leads of Bose Stratagem. I shouldn't just call them idiots out of hand. They will sometimes just morph. They'll just be like talking about Aimwell and Archer, and then it will sort of organically turn into a conversation about Doracourt and Saville. And it's been so fun to watch the actors like take point on bridging the two plays and having those interlacing conversations where they're really starting to integrate the two in a dramaturgical way. I would say the actors have taken charge of that as much as, if not more so than I have as the director, because they're interested in it. They're excited by it. And their brains are always in two places anyway. So they're sort of like, well, we might as well just commit to talking and thinking about both. It's been really delightful, and I think they've been very playful. Rehearsals have been very playful. Actors are just playing. Now that they know each other and now that they know how these plays work, they can just like make bold choices and do ridiculous things. And we have Jamie Sanders is playing Irish character who's pretending to be French, so he's doing a bad French accent on top of a good Irish accent, which is not his American accent, and it's great. It's completely delightful. It's sometimes hard to understand, but it's extremely fun to listen to, and the chemistries are just like they just sparkle because there's all this built-in emotional groundwork that has been set through the other projects. And I think that's one of maybe the main benefits you get from rep in any scenario is charged relationships, deeper relationships between the actors themselves, the artists that are involved, but also between the artists and the audiences. Because audiences will recognize a face, they'll recognize a voice. And so they'll come and see Leontes in The Winter's Tale one night and be like, wow, stake through the heart, what a difficult character with such a big journey. And then the next night they'll come back and that same actor is playing like Elbow in Measure for Measure, right? And they're like, wow, it's so fun to see them, exercise their comic chops and do something that's really light and breezy and broad as opposed to this like deep psychological, character like Leontes, but it's one actor. So audiences get to experience not only the range that an artist brings to the table, and maybe their chops in different genres, comedic, tragic, historic, whatever it may be, but also they get to feel like they have a relationship with that actor. It's like, oh, I went on this big emotional journey with Leontes and really tore at my heartstrings, and so now I feel like I care about Elbow, even though Elbow maybe doesn't have very much emotional, there's not much happening to get an audience on board with Elbow emotionally. The audience will root for him because they feel like they have a connection to that actor, to their voice and body and ethos. And I have certainly found that as a director. Like, there are characters that I care about so deeply and so profoundly because I care about that actor, because I care about having seen them in another role that maybe tugged at my heartstrings. And I don't know, I'm sure that all of you're nodding, you've probably had that experience either as an actor yourself with audiences or watching an actor in rep.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think what you're describing, the way I put it sometimes is it puts the audience inside the joke. And there is a sort of charm and a sort of kick that I think people get out of seeing people do different things. And like I can play this and then I can play this and the sort of gymnastics that happens. But it's you're describing a sort of community building thing, which is a way of looking at rep from the audience perspective. And it is true that most theaters have their audience is repertory if their plays are not.
Sure.
So at a regional theater, the same group, the season's ticket holders, the school group,
right,
buses, those are the repertory people, and they might be coming back. And sort of the convention right now, and I hate that this is the case. I think I hate it mostly, is that you just get a contract and then you're done. And then depending on the casting director or the director, they might hire you back. And part of the reason Sweet Tea has sort of built a sort of quasi-repertory company model is because like theater and symphonies and certain other places like that really adopted the sort of contract approach because it was cheaper and frankly more exploitative to sort of treat artists like that, get them on the contract for the 6 weeks you need them and then get them off. But like everything else, every other business we know, except for like building houses, is based on like people working together for a long time, and building a team and all of that. And I don't know why, other than the exploitation side of things, there's not really a good reason that I can think of to depart from that.
Yeah.
Certainly not a pro artist one anyway. And so, I think going back to those, I don't think you can understand one of these plays if you don't understand the repertory system behind them. It's kind of like you have to, know how language works in order to understand how the plays work. This is one of the languages that's working underneath those. And you can try and do it without that understanding, but I think you're probably weakening what you offer to people if you don't carry that knowledge with you at the very least.
Agreed. And we just had an example of trying to offer an imitation of the restoration performance and production model, because the group of us, the 14 of us who did the Way of the World audio drama, which is on the Sweet Tea Shakespeare Hours podcast, we rehearsed and recorded that in a 9-day span, only 18 hours of rehearsal, in July of 2020. And on this past Saturday, 2 days ago, the 14 of us convened for the first time as a group since July, since we wrapped recording. We met all together on Zoom to read out loud another play by William Congreve, who wrote The Way of the World. And it was his Love for Love, which he wrote 5 years prior to The Way of the World. But he wrote it for the exact same company of actors. So the same, whatever, I think it was 14, maybe 15 artists who did Love for Love would also go on to do The Way of the World, with the exception of one actor who played Forsyth, who passed away before The Way of the World was produced. And so I thought it would be fun, since we were doing a table reading of a Congreve, to bring back everyone who had done the full-length radio play of Congreve. And I thought it would be even more fun if we all read for the character that was the analog character for the restoration actor whose slot we had filled in, right? So, for instance, when we did The Way of the World, I played Millamant, the sort of ingenue lover, and her actress, Anne Bracegirdle from the Restoration, specialized in the young, virginal, lively ingenue. Like, that was like her role. That was her niche in the theater. And all the roles she played fell into that exact archetype. And so when she had done Love for William Congreve 5 years previously, she had played a character named Angelica, which in many ways reads like the prototype for Millamant. And so all of us on Saturday were reading for the role that was analogous, dependent upon the restoration actor. And so we all got to kind of be restoration actors, because we were playing another of their roles from Congreve's canon. And it was so fun to see the similarities, but also the differences between those roles. And it was fun to get to build upon the chemistries that we built and discovered together in doing The Way of the World. Because even though it was a table read, which meant that none of us had ever read the play aloud together, we had never rehearsed it, we had never spent any time with the play in person with each other, we'd only looked at the text individually, I still felt like the reading was dazzlingly alive and vibrant and visceral and deeply felt, in a way that sometimes you can only get when you rehearse a show. And it's because it was the same group of people who had done a full show before. And we were all working in a sort of off of a repertory foundation. And so Jill, you were there, you got to watch the whole thing. I mean, how was it for you? Like, did you feel that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then just, knowing that a lot of these actors too have been sprinkled in throughout all of the other, like Man of Mode and The Rover too, like there's that kind of chemistry that has brought them to this too. But you could sense in the room there was that reunion sort of group virtual hug. Let's dive in. And then just Love for Love, the text itself. It was so great, Claire, when you ran us through the exercise of, in one word, how would you describe this play? And the words that were used were like boisterous, gregarious. Like I remember in my email sent to the cast, it was like nautical naughtiness, because there's a lot of metaphors to do with the sea and all that stuff. So it was refreshing to kind of not only see the actors play with each other again because they had worked in that same company, but then the text just allowed, like sort of in contrast to Way of the World, like Way of the World, in my opinion, is a bit more like refined. And I think, Claire, we've talked about it being like a snow globe kind of thing, like it exists. Whereas Love for Love, it's again, kind of like Bose in a way that it's a bit messier. It's a bit like raunchier, right? And so there's a playfulness. So yeah, so there's a lot of layers going on. There was like, oh, look at this reunion happening of actors being comfortable with each other, and speaking text to each other, this heightened text to each other already before, but now it's like, oh great, and now this text has like, it's a little bit wackier than like Way of the World 2, so like the playfulness got turned up a notch. And it was neat too, seeing, for instance, like some of the characters interacting in Love for Love didn't necessarily have a lot of interactions in the Way of the World.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So then there was that too, where it was like, oh my goodness, like that actor pairing chemistry is fantastic, but they've never done a scene together yet. You know, they've been in a production together, or they've been in this digital restoration series together. So now that we're kind of like this project being like the end of that, me being on the other side of this table, that is something that's so fascinating to see. Of like, I have so much confidence in like any single person in like this sort of mini DRS rep that we have could do like a scene, could have like a scene partner with any of the other actors, and there's like embedded digital chemistry that's there. Like, and
we're gonna strip
we're
gonna strip the audio from that and release it on the podcast so people can listen to at least the Zoom recording of that reading. It's very, very fun. For you, Jessie, like, have there been shows that you've seen, or I suppose rep actors you have seen in like one role and then another, that have been particularly like moving or exciting for you?
I'm sure there were like, I don't know how much I can like recall at this point. I'm sure there were some in college, because that's probably when I would have seen the most rep work being done.
Sure.
Well, and this isn't really, I mean, it's company rep, so I guess our company. I love Shalene.
Oh, who doesn't?
You know Shalene. She's fantastic.
She's so good.
She played one of our wives in Merry Wives of Windsor. So she was very fun and like goofy in that one a little bit. You know how they kind of, they're funny. But then she played Lady M in that Scottish play.
Yeah.
Like 6 months later, and it was such a big contrast that it was so amazing. I think it just being able to see her in those two different roles.
That is so cool.
It makes you. It goes back to talking about, you know, the depth of the actor, and you get to see their range, and that was really, really cool to see there.
Yeah.
I would just add, so in the Richard III Merry Wives rep, she played Mistress Ford and Lady Anne.
Yes.
And Aaron Alderman played Falstaff and Richard.
Nice.
And so seeing those two
that was a good fun
tussle in very different ways,
sure,
and with sort of different tool sets, was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then in Mac, I mean, she was Lady M and he was Banquo. And so there was some tussling in different ways there too.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, so Shalene played Lady Townley in The Man of Mode, and Lady Townley is a very sage, graceful, elegant woman of London society. And she in many ways is kind of the voice of reason in that play. And she's rooting for the one couple that seems to like genuinely love each other. So there's a lot to love about Lady Townley. She's awesome. And her companion in that play, her kind of part servant, but also just kind of part like gal pal, is Amelia, who is the young woman that Lady Townley's nephew is in love with, and that she's trying to help them get together. Amelia was played by Emily Garrison, who has done a lot of DRS work with us. The two of them were just delightful together as Amelia and Lady Townley. They had so many wonderful scenes of conspiratorial, girl friendship. And now we are coming up to Venice Preserved, which is a political thriller. It's a restoration tragedy, but it's kind of like a blend of Julius Caesar plus Othello plus Merchant of Venice plus like Les Miserables. And Emily and Shalene are going to be playing opposite together again, and this time they're going to be playing conspirators who are trying to assassinate the senators of Venice. So it's going to be an entirely different, like a whole different ethos from the, the refined, well-dressed ladies of London, like drinking champagne and gossiping, as opposed to now they're going to play like really like scrappy, grungy, anti-establishment, like anarchists who are, involved in a government conspiracy. So I'm excited to see the two of them get to play together, but in an entirely different world with entirely different stakes. I think that'll be really fun.
That's a blast.
Jillian is so awesome. I love that she played Lady Anne and Ford, Mistress Ford. That's such a fantastic pairing. Who was Elizabeth, the mom that Richard goes toe to toe with?
That was Laurel Moran.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think she. Yeah, she was in college at the time, so I don't think she did anything in Merry Wives.
No, she wasn't in Merry Wives. Wow,
Merry
I
Wives.
can't talk.
It's that Bailey's. It's just slurring you right down. No, I think the scene between Dowager Queen Elizabeth and Richard III is like, it's my favorite scene in that whole play. It's such a good scene. It's such a juicy scene. I think people talk about the Lady Anne one more, but I think there's actually more going on with the Elizabeth scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure Aaron killed it in both.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Jeremy, have you ever been an actor in rep? Played two roles at the same time?
I feel like the answer is yes, but I don't know why. I mean, I don't know what. I feel like the answer is yes. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah.
This isn't really rep, but we've talked about this, Claire, already too, but back at my one of my fourth year shows at Theater and Drama Studies, the program I went to at University of Toronto, I was in Top Girls, which essentially kind of is like doing a show in rep. I played Isabella Bird, and then I played Angie. So that was cool because, again, Claire and I, we've talked about this too, but the scene of the dinner table scene, my director had me in a trance, like Isabella Bird goes into a trance and like has to like untie her corset on stage, and then I like stood on top of the table and kind of said my last lines, and then I had to run backstage and like slap on a bunch of thick eyeliner, put my hair in pigtails, put on some like fishnet stockings and like rainbow colored sleeves, and came back in as the 9-year-old rebellious beast that is Angie, and kind of faced off with Dull Gret, who was the last of like the dinner table women to leave, with my pogo stick. I kind of like put it up as a bow and arrow, and then I hopped in on a pogo stick. So I had to go from like a 70-year-old pioneer sort of woman ahead of her time to this like 9-year-old 80s punk.
Yep.
I had like tie-dye drumsticks, and I like played on like a trash can. It was so fun. But again, it felt like you were doing two plays, right? Like as I'm physically getting myself ready for Angie, I'm totally clicking and switching gears. And going from a Scottish dialect to a Cockney, like more Cockney dialect.
I played Marlene in Top Girls when I was in college, and I felt like I was the only one who wasn't working in rep. Everybody else felt like they had to, they were doing two entirely different roles, entirely different eras, different, like, just different stakes, different everything. And meanwhile, my job was to be the through line. My job was to be consistent all the way through. And it was very strange. I remember having conversations with my director about how strange it was to feel like I was in a play that was just moving forwards, and everybody else was in one play that got in a car crash, and then they went to a different play. Oh God, has Sweet Tea ever done Top Girls?
We have not. I did it. I stage managed it in college in a rep, which is the last. I was thinking through all of the reps I might have done. That's the one I can remember most clearly, where we were doing black comedy and Top Girls and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead.
Nice.
All at the same, at the same time. I was involved in two of the three. I was in black comedy and stage managing Top Girls.
Wow. That would
I
have
will
been
never forget Top Girls because I was in charge as stage manager of buying the food for the banquet.
Yep.
And I didn't remember or didn't take the note that one of the lead actors had a soy allergy and went to go buy the food and there was soy in one of the things, and like that was a whole thing. So just don't do that. That's
Don't kill your
that's
actors.
bad. Don't do that.
right.
She was fine. But just as a rule,
Yeah,
avoid it
sure.
if at all possible.
I really deeply, profoundly love that play. I mean, I love Carol Churchill in general, but that one has a real special place in my heart. It's a really good one.
Yeah.
And that first act at the dinner table is just it's like an actor's gold mine. It's a bit like Twelfth Night. Like, you can't be disappointed no matter who you're playing because you're going to get to do something awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
I think Guinness agrees with us. I think that's why he's licking
Yep.
Jesse's face. It's an approbation of what we're saying.
He does. He agrees.
Any less lingering thoughts about rep or anything you want to say about repertory theater or ensemble theater before we let our listeners go and enjoy their own cocktails?
When can our lovely listeners expect to watch the stratagems?
Excellent question. So we are doing our recordings for the audio drama the first week of February, and we will have our live Zoom performance to share with audience members on Saturday, February 6th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So that is very exciting. It's going to be such a romp. There's a lot of physical comedy. We throw Beanie Babies. Someone jumps out of a woman's closet. There's a lot of chase sequences, and there's like scared servants and plots and subterfuges and like 5 heists. So it's going to be incredibly fun. It's just deeply funny. And then we record the Bells Stratagem the first week of March, and we are performing that in a live Zoom performance on Friday, March 12th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And it will be the exact same company of 16 actors, all of us in different roles, in a different world. And the Bells Stratagem has at the centerpiece a masquerade. So all of us who were in the Rover and everyone who's not, we all have our masks now. And you will get to see us all with our masks on Friday, March 12th for the Bells Stratagem. And then, hopefully, assuming post-production goes well, we will be able to drop the Bose Stratagem sometime in the summer of 21 and the Bells Stratagem in early autumn. So you'll be able to listen to them in their full, polished, stereophonic perfection later in 2021 on our podcast.
Delightful. You heard it here, folks. Don't miss
So many
it.
delights.
SweetTeaShakespeare.com/tickets. If you want to come, we would love to have you. All right. It was good to hang out with all of you. Jill, our guest, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jill.
Thanks for inviting me, everyone. This is so fun. As always.
Jessie and Jeremy, I will see you next week.
Ta-ta.
Yeah. Bye, y'all.
Oh,
Cheers.